Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Spirit of Prophecy podcast. Appreciate you joining me. We're going live today, so let me know if we are having any sound issues or anything. But I do appreciate you watching this live. We're going to be talking about radicalization today. I've got several things I want to cover on here. Also, I do want to say that I'm going, if I know you, I'd like to send me an email, lbc@rockfalls@gmail.com, and I wouldn't mind just having some random guests, possibly. I need to know who you are. I thought about just doing like Charlie Kirk and just letting anybody like come up, but I'm afraid some pervert will come on here and start dropping F-bombs or something like that. So I don't know if I want to do that, but if you want to email me at lbc@rockfalls@gmail.com and would like to join the program, we might let you come on in a little bit. I do have some stuff that I want to make sure I say and cover first. So if you are interested, get it to me early. I'm going to start preaching here in a little bit, but then I might open it up for just some random discussion and things like that. But I hope you enjoyed those Charlie Kirk clips that I played before the start of this. I just did that for a couple of reasons. One, just remember him and honor him. I do think he did a lot of good, and I think now is probably doing more good just because everyone's talking about him. They're talking about his message, and he was somebody who preached grace and Jesus Christ, and a lot of people are hearing about that right now, and that's great. And of course, on the internet, we have the radicals, and I've already heard from some of them trying to just let me know how unsaved Charlie Kirk is. And you people are the ones that I'm kind of inspired today's subject matter. Now, what I'm going to be covering on here, the main premise of what I'm going to be covering on here, I actually did a sermon on about a year ago with the same title on avoiding radicalization. I do want to bring up some of these same points in this format, just to remind everybody of some things. I preached this last year. I believe it was shortly after the assassination attempt on President Trump. And so whenever we start seeing crazy behavior, radical behavior, it sparks certain discussion that I think is important. There is a lot of crazy things that are taking place right now in our world, and it's not hard to figure out what's causing it. And so I do want to look at some biblical principles that apply for all ages. The problems we are facing today, they do not, while they're unique in the fact that the internet's new, the human flaws that cause those things are not unique. They've been around since the beginning of time. And so, I've seen people leaving questions already. I will try to get to those. I do want to get to my subject matter here pretty soon. But I'm trying to read what's on here right now. But yeah, so those clips I shared, those are just a few random ones I put together that I had seen shared that I thought were really good. And I thought I would use that to kind of kick things off. It's like, because one of the things, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but in the internet world and even in the IFB world or any wing of religion, we can get so radicalized on issues where we just get absolutely crazy, and it's annoying. And it's like, I've been amazed. I'll listen to some of the things that Charlie Kirk said about Christ, about salvation, about grace, and then somebody will hear one line where maybe he used a term in a way we wouldn't use it, and they're just ready to declare him unsaved. And I think you people are nuts. You are being radicalized by nut jobs in the internet. And this program is for you today. Again, I've seen some behavior I didn't appreciate. I heard about some behavior that thankfully I didn't see. Somebody said that there was a pastor that was wearing a shirt that said Charlie is in hell. What in the world? So I don't like that kind of nonsense. There's a real problem with that. But Carrie asked a question on here. It says, everything has changed. What does our response look like? I don't feel like our response should change, but the feelings have changed. And yeah, I mean, Unfortunately, a lot of what I've seen that has been good this week as a response to this, we saw a lot of the same type of thing after the Trump assassination attempt. And while a lot of times things like that get everybody thinking correctly, we forget about it. And then we move on and we get right back to fighting about stupid stuff. And so, yes, people do need to avoid again, avoiding radicalization is part of it, which is what we're going to be talking about in this program. I've been hearing other people talking about it this week. In fact, one of the things that I heard about, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I need to stay on point, and I'm not Charlie Kirk. I'm not one of these people that are smart enough where I can just stay on subject while interacting with people, talking to people, reading questions and things. So if you all will bear with me, I do want to take a little bit of time to talk about my main subject matter that I have. And if you have questions, leave them. If it seems like I skipped them, just put them on there again later. I get way behind in the chat, and I'm not smart enough to talk on the chat and or talk and read at the same time. I'm not that smart. So you'll have to bear with me on that. And again, if you'd like to join the program, just email me and maybe we'll let some people jump on later on. But let me get into the subject matter that I wanted to cover. And I want to start out with Genesis chapter 4:22, and I'm going to do some hardcore springboard passage methods, right, with this, where I'm going to basically take a story in the Bible and kind of do what I want with it. All right, we're not preaching right now. We're doing a podcast, so I should be allowed to do this. But in Genesis 4:22, it says, "In Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron, and the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said unto his wives, Adah and Zillah, Hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech. Hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold." You think, Pastor Tommy, what does that passage have to do with anything that is going on right now or radicalization? Well, let me make an application from that. So in this story, we have, first off, it starts out with the story of Cain and Abel. All right, I better turn the sound off of my phone. We have the story where Cain kills Abel, and then it goes through the genealogies, right? And so we have Cain murders somebody. Now, and then after we get several generations in, we have Lamech, and he has a son whose name is Tubal-Cain, who works with metal. He's an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. And interestingly enough, after he starts figuring out how to work with metal, the very next thing we see is Lamech, the seventh from Adam on Cain's side, referencing him slaying a man let me quote this to you. He says, "I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. If Cain should be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold." So it sounds like he may have killed two people. I don't know if he killed a man and a young man, or if he is just emphasizing after he said he killed a man that it was a young man. Either way, Lamech has killed somebody right after it mentions Tubal-Cain working with metal. And we see him basically just declare, hey, nothing's going to happen. God spared Cain, and God said if anybody messes with him, they'll be avenged sevenfold. And so for me, 70 and sevenfold. And then we go into the genealogies of Seth. We get to the seventh from Adam. We have Enoch. And then we start seeing the world become filled with violence. I believe it's during the days of Lamech that we see, and during a time when man started to invent things like metal and learning how to make weapons and things like that, all of a sudden, the world gets filled with violence. And it got so bad that God had to destroy the world and start over. And what do we get from that? Well, when man invents new things, we often, we have to teach ourselves how to handle these things. Again, man is evil all by itself. We see Cain killing Abel before we even have weapons or anything like that. But when the technology expanded, we see that evil increase and made it easier for man to do terrible things and harmful things. And as new technology comes along, often we have to figure out how to live with those things, how to keep ourselves safe with those things. And we don't often think about these things, but imagine what it was like the first time somebody made a sword. They started working with metal, and it's like, hey, if we make this thing really sharp, we can chop things up with it. We can cut things. We can cut down trees. And they did. They started making sharp weapons with those things, but then people started getting hurt with those things. And so then they probably came up with safety things. And then later, we invented guns, and people figured out, hey, we probably should put safeties on these things because sometimes they fire when we don't want to fire. And so as we come up with new dangerous things, bad things sometimes happen as a result of these new inventions. And we've got to find out ways to protect ourselves. That's why I have all the safety things we do on cars today, because accidents have happened. It's like, hey, we've got to figure out a way to prevent these things, how to keep people safe. And the internet is relatively a very new thing. Social media, relatively speaking, it's a very new thing, and it's creating problems because we have this sin nature, and mankind as a people, we've got to learn how to work with these things. And because some of these things bring out the crazy in man, bring out the evil in man, and great harm and great damage is often done. And so when it comes to the internet, I think it's making a lot of people crazy, and it's making radicalization easier than ever before. And understand, there's been radicals since before the internet, okay? Radicalization has always been a thing. But as a society, we start learning how to recognize these things, how to avoid a lot of these things, how to protect ourselves from these things. But when it comes to the internet, we've not figured that out yet. We're learning. Okay? And one of the things that I've been hearing people talk about this week that has me slightly concerned, because I don't trust their solutions they're going to come up with. I'd never heard this term until this week, and they've been kind of applying it to what happened with the Charlie Kirk assassination. But it's called algorithmic radicalization. If you've not heard of that, algorithmic radicalization is the concept that that recommender algorithms on popular social media sites such as YouTube and Facebook drive users towards progressively more extreme content over time, leading them to developing radicalized extremist political views. Algorithms record user interactions from likes and dislikes to amount of time spent on posts to generate endless media aimed to keep users engaged. Through echo chamber channels, the consumer is driven to be more polarized through preferences in media and self-confirmation. Algorithmic radicalization remains a controversial phenomenon, as it is often not in the best interest of social media companies to remove echo chamber channels. To what extent recommender algorithms are responsible for radicalization remains disputed. Studies have found contradictory results as to whether algorithms have promoted extremist content. So hopefully y'all got that and understand what that's referring to. But basically, algorithms they are designed to they've come up with ways to figure out what you as a user like. And as they start figuring out what you as a user like, they start recommending those things to you. And those are basically determined, if you hit like, that affects it. How long you watch a video. Don't you dare turn off this video that you're watching right now. You'll mess up the algorithm, and people are going to be less likely, the AI is going to be less likely to recommend it to other people. But understand, those algorithms, they are not trying to make people radical. It just is naturally doing that. And I'm going to explain why that is in a little bit. So the problem that I'm having with what people are saying about this problem of algorithmic radicalization is they're saying we need to decide what content is pushed out there. We need to decide what people are going to watch. And so the problem with these algorithms is they work. That's all there is to it. They work. They are effective. And because we have a fallen carnal nature, again, we do tend to, because of these algorithms, they figure out how to feed us things that are going to get us deeper and deeper into insanity. And I'll explain why that is here in a little bit. But let me read another part of this too. But yeah, Elon Musk Brother Chris says, Charlie Kirk reminds me of Stephen's martyrdom. And you know what? I do consider him a martyr because, again, I know he taught a lot of political things, but understand, while he was known for politics, I think what really triggered people was not even just what he said about Christ and the gospel, but family values. He promoted a lot of very biblical values that people try to associate with politics. In reality, it's just biblical. And and he died for those things. I definitely have no problem with calling him a martyr. But let me get this back up here. So notice this next part here. It mentions social media echo chambers and filter bubbles. Social media platforms learn the interests and likes of the user to modify their experiences in their feed to keep them engaged and scrolling, known as a filter bubble. An echo chamber is formed when users come across beliefs that magnify or reinforce their thoughts and form a group of like-minded users in a closed system. Echo chambers spread information without any opposing beliefs and can possibly lead to confirmation bias. According to group polarization theory, an echo chamber can potentially lead users and groups toward more extreme, radicalized positions. According to the National Library of Medicine, users online tend to prefer information adhering to their worldviews, ignore dissenting information, and form polarized groups around shared narratives. Furthermore, when polarization is high, misinformation quickly proliferates. So understand what they are describing there. It is a real thing, but there is a reason all that happens. Again, the problem that they have with algorithms is they work, and they help people find content that will keep them engaged and will keep them interested. YouTube wants everybody on YouTube. Facebook wants everybody on Facebook. And if you're just scrolling and seeing a bunch of stuff you don't care about, you're not going to stay on there. So they have found ways to find what you do care about. And then they start showing you more and more of that stuff. And typically what ends up happening, you become even more locked in to what you've already decided is true, whatever your way of thinking is, and you become radicalized. And you do that because it's a part of your fallen nature. And so I do want to explain, and again, the solution is always in the Bible. The solution is always going to be the same thing. Again, the problems that we're facing right now with the radicalization going on is not a new thing. It's just being manifest, or it's being caused by a new thing, the internet and their algorithms and the methods that they use to give people content that they want. And so I want to explain exactly how this works, because the reason we're becoming radical, the reason people become so radical on these things, it would be, it's because, radical content is just naturally more engaging and likely to hold people's interest. See, we like radical content. Our carnal nature likes, and listen, there's always going to be some preacher that's going to be able to come along and I'll show you why it's good to be radical. Paul was radical. David was radical, and then they'll show something about him being zealous about something. And so understand, that term radical, they addicted themselves to the ministry. I hope you understand. I'm talking about towards negative things. All right. And so just being crazy. Okay. And so we like radical content. It's more entertaining. We all naturally like watching somebody behave in a way we would like to behave, but our social surroundings make it difficult for us to get away with it. Do you want to know why? You want to know why you often don't behave certain ways? Because you don't want to embarrass your family. You don't want to embarrass your wife. You don't want to embarrass your children. You don't want to look bad in public. You want to know one of the reasons a lot of people watch what they say on social media? Because they don't want all their friends seeing it, and the people that are following them to see them behaving bad. They don't want to embarrass themselves. And you want to know why that is? Because thankfully, you have people in your life that will embarrass you if you act like a maniac. And so because of, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but there are certain things that God wants us to have in our life, that God instituted. and wants to be a part of our life that keep us from becoming radical, that keep us from giving into that crazy, fallen nature and just the crazy side of all of us. And so all of us we have restraint in our life, and that's good. We should be thankful for restraint that is in our life. We should be thankful for the fact that our wife, does get embarrassed if we behave in certain ways, because that, the fact that, it will embarrass her and bother her, it causes us to not maybe do what we feel like doing in the heat of the moment. And so on the internet, the crazy guys. So for example, all right, somebody that we disagree with doctrinally, because that's what we talk about on here. We talk about doctrine, okay? Is a lot more entertaining if I'm talking about pre-tribbers and normally I was like, I disagree with pre-trib. The doctrine annoys the fire out of me, but I don't hate pre-tribbers. They're saved. They're my brothers. I can fellowship with them. And folks, that's what I believe. That is what I practice. That is what I live. But me saying that's boring. What you would rather hear me say, you would rather hear me get up here and just foam at the mouth, talk about how stupid they are. They're heretics. They're lazy. And I don't think these things. But, I'm just saying all this crazy stuff. What is wrong with these people? And I'm just flipping out. I'm flipping out. You all would love it if I found some pre-trib guy on there who probably loves the Lord, who probably loves his church, and I'm showing clips of him. This is wrong, and I'm just debunking him. This idiot, the people in his church, they must all be stupid. What's wrong with this guy? You all would love watching that. You know why? Because that's what we want to do when we disagree with somebody. When we disagree with somebody, we want to act like a maniac. We want to tell them they're stupid. We want to tell them off. But your social surroundings typically restrain you and won't allow you to do that. But that guy on the internet that's doing that, man, I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to tell somebody off like that, okay? Now, I'm not going to confess anything to you, but is there anybody out there who has ever, maybe you wanted to slap somebody, okay? How many, when you saw Philly's Karen taking the ball away from that kid, thought, man, somebody needs to slap that woman, okay? Now, we know we shouldn't do that. We know that's wrong. We know that is immoral. But that carnal side of us kind of likes the idea of it. And so if there was somebody out there that did it, guess what? We're all going to watch it. We're going to think it was funny. We're going to think it's great. And so understand, the guy on the internet, talking about doctrine, who's foaming at the mouth, calling people names, behaving in a way you want to, but you shouldn't. We love watching that. We like watching people do things that our carnal side would like to do, but we know we shouldn't do. And we know we shouldn't cuss people out. But at the same time, sometimes you'd like to. And because of that, you enjoy watching somebody else do that. Well, here's where we're contributing to the problem. You have your social media influencers out there. You have YouTubers. You have people like myself who have a podcast. We want people to watch our content. And the reality is, if we would be crazier, you all would watch more. You would be more engaged. And if you watched more, if you were more engaged, the algorithms would push our stuff out there more. We would be a lot more popular. If I get on here and I'm just saying what I believe, and it's like, pre-trib, I disagree with it, but it's not a damnable heresy. It's annoying. I love these people. If I have a pre-tribber come on here and I'm being nice to them, that's boring. If we got in a knockdown drag out and had a dumpster fire, it'd get a lot more views. And you know what that's going to encourage me to do? Have more dumpster fires. But one of the things I determined, if you go back on my Spirit of Prophecy channel, go on videos and search by oldest. The first 2 episodes that I did was one on theological cancel culture and prophecy. And on that one, I talk about just canceling people that we don't agree with. I don't like echo chambers. And I was like, from the time I started this podcast, I was like, we're not doing this, because I didn't want to become a radical post-tribber. So we're not going to do that. We're going to engage with opposition. And then the second one I did was on sensationalism, contradiction, and prophecy. Sensationalism that gets views. Sensationalism gets people's attention. If I would get on here and be all sensational and just crazy and like, anything that people disagree with me on, it's the worst thing in the world. It's a damnable heresy. It'll lead you to this, and it'll lead you to Calvinism, it'll lead to preterism, it'll lead to all these things. That gets attention. That you all will engage with that more. And then that's just going to motivate me because, man, when I acted like a maniac, I got way more views than when I acted normal. And now I'm getting more radical and I'm making you more radical. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And so, again, being radical, it's just kind of a part of our sin nature. We like the crazy behavior. And the problem is, too, and I've just gotten to the point, and some of you that are on here, too, right? I've just gotten to the point where a lot of people that follow me, that I don't know personally, especially, I just assume you're all mentally challenged because I've gotten into it with people before for just being stupid online. And then later I met them and found out they were mentally challenged. And I'm like, ooh. And there's a lot of mentally challenged people out there who blindly follow the crazy examples. You got to watch out for that. I do not want to lead people in that way. And so the reward, the reward that comes from being radical, it pushes people to promote things they don't even truly believe. So again, if I'm just railing on the pre-tribbers all the time and people are loving it, I don't really think that about them. And so I determine I am always going to be honest in this program, and I'm not going to use sensationalism. I just watched a podcast last night of a pre-trib guy, and he was calling mid-trib and post-trib a damnable heresy. He said it's a damnable heresy. I left a comment, which I don't want to accuse him of deleting it because sometimes, the YouTube stops the comments, but I left a comment just like, hey, you made it sound like on there you think being wrong in the timing of the rapture is a damnable heresy. Would you like to come on the podcast and explain to me why that is? And my comment was gone. So that's sensationalism. Okay, that is ridiculous. And so that'll radicalize your side to be even more hardcore. I don't even think somebody's saved that's wrong on the rapture. No, that's stupid. That's unnecessary. But a lot of you want to hear that kind of thing. And y'all are crazy. Okay. Some of you are on the live chat right now. And so briefly, I want to point something out. In Ecclesiastes 4:9, it says, two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him that is alone when he fall, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if two lie together, then they have heat, but how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. And so understand, we need other people in our life. We absolutely do. We absolutely need other people in our life. And I think there's three institutions that God intended to help keep us normal and to keep us from becoming that way. And these people on the internet, okay? In fact, some of you people watching this right now, probably in the live chat right now, you're about to get hit right between the eyes, okay? You are going to get hit right between the eyes. I hope you're prepared for this because you need it. And so the first thing, if you want to keep from becoming a radical, you have to avoid isolation. We all need accountability. Again, those who are radicalized always isolate themselves from the three things that God intended to hold us all accountable and to help keep us in line. And trust me, we need these things. And the first one is family. Okay, family. Proverbs 10:1, a wise son maketh a glad father, but a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother. You know what? There is something instinctively in all of us, and even in myself as an adult, we want to please our parents. We want to make them proud. We do not want to embarrass them and humiliate them. And because of that, it helps keep us in line. You want to know one of the reasons I don't want to go out and assassinate somebody? Because I don't want my dad to have to turn me in. I don't want my mom to have to deal with the grief of seeing her son go to prison. Not just my parents, my sisters, my children, my wife, my grandchild, which, by the way, I have some pictures I was wanting to show everybody. That's what grandpas do. I'm a grandpa now. I got to show pictures. I'll save that for later. But understand, that I don't want to hurt them. So if I think about doing something crazy, it affects so many people I care about. There are so many people who have positive influence in my life that, it keeps me in line. And I get tempted to be crazy sometimes, but I have to think about all the people I'm going to embarrass. And family influence should continue even after you leave the home. I get it. You're on your own now. Your father's not your authority anymore, but his influence should still be effective in your life. Proverbs 23:22, hearken unto thy father that begat thee, and despise not thy mother when she is old. And let me tell you, if you're going out there and acting like a nut job and being crazy and you're doing illegal things and listen, I've got 2 kids that are growing up and out of the house now, and I can't even imagine how much it would mess me up if they went and did something and went to prison. Again, they did good while under my roof. They've been doing good since they've been out from under my roof for a long time. I think I set them up good, and they're on a great path. I'm very pleased. But even 10 years from now, I would be devastated to watch one of my children be thrown into prison. I don't want to see that kind of thing. And I've been out of my parents' home for longer than I was in my parents' home, and it would still devastate them. And I can't even imagine doing that to them. But let me tell you something about the radicals. They typically are not close to their family. And let me tell you, when I was involved with a certain movement, one thing we had a lot of the people that were coming through our church, what they all had in common, all their family was reprobates. All their family was reprobates. These people all were completely isolated from family, and they were nut jobs. They were weirdos. You know why? They didn't have that restraining influence. And maybe their family was reprobates. Maybe. But you know what? Because you had a bunch of family that was all reprobates, you did not have that you don't have that restraining influence in your life that many of us have. You don't have people who truly love you and care about you, who are pulling you in the right direction. And so you need to listen. If all your family truly is reprobates, let's just give it to you now. They're all reprobates. You're the only saved person in your family. Well, you need to realize you're in a vulnerable position, and you've got to be even more careful. And you need to make sure you have these other things, because we do. There's 3 things that I believe God intended. And one of the things that Charlie Kirk promoted was, strong families, and he had a lot of good family values that he promoted. And man, that's important. That's one of the reasons our country is in the mess that it's in right now. The family unit is just completely falling apart. Most families are broken today. You've got just all the divorce and remarriage. You got people not even getting married, just having children with multiple partners, and no fathers in the home. And by design, it is a mess. I mean, we even have homes, that we let queers adopt kids. I mean, it's out of control. And so we don't have to be like that as Christians. But it is interesting, though, that churches like ours always have all the nut jobs that seem to have family that are all reprobates. But many today who are distancing themselves from their family, many of them that I have observed. And listen, I've had the people come through my church who was like telling me how all their family was reprobates. And then later I met their family, and their family were not reprobates. No, these people that came through our church were nut jobs. And I even went to dinner with one family member one time. They're like, it's like, yeah, they told us we were reprobates. And I won't share the reason why. The reason was ridiculous. Yes, they had a sin in their life, but this did not make them reprobates. But it was interesting. It was interesting. But here's why many people isolate themselves from family. Hey, lady out there who's married to an abusive husband, I'll bet one of the things that your husband did is he's isolated you from your family. I'll bet he moved you away from them. And I'll bet you guys had to cut off communication with them a long time ago for some weird reason. You want to know what the real reason was? I know it's because they probably said something wrong about the Trinity and therefore they're reprobates. But the real reason that he cut you off from your family was to avoid accountability. And that is a huge red flag. Listen, even if your family isn't everything they should be, if you are such a hardcore Christian, why aren't you trying to influence them? Husbands, is your leadership so weak that if your wife gets around her family during holidays, she's just going to just dump everything that you believe and that you've taught her, and she's not going to follow your leadership anymore? Or is it because if they find out what a rat you are and what a sorry, abusive husband you are, her dad and her brothers are going to be tempted to like take you out back or take you on a long car ride that you don't come back from, take you on a hunting trip where you might have an accident. That's probably the real reason why that is. And you know what? That's good. Hey, you know what? I'm okay with my wife having family and having a brother who is in the military, who, if I hurt her, he would probably kick my backside. I'm fine with that. You know why? Because I would never hurt my wife. And so I don't need to worry about that. But I don't, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't intimidate me thinking that if I ever hurt my wife, there's several people who would want to kill me. I'm okay with that. And you know what I don't need to do ahead of time is isolate my wife from them. Because they're going to be more loyal to her, than they are to me. Because, she's their sister. So you people who isolate, your wife and from her parents and her siblings, you make me nervous. And I'm not always, when you tell me your family's all reprobates, I understand that's possible, but I might not believe you. Okay. Again, they're out there. I know that is a fact, but anyway, if you do have family influencing you towards godliness, you are very, very blessed. And I'm so thankful for all the godly influences I have in my life. And so, and again, there are good people. There are fantastic people who do not have family, maybe because their family is evil, or maybe they just don't exist. They just don't have a lot of family. But if you have no family you are close to, it doesn't automatically mean you're bad, but it does mean you are vulnerable and you need extra protection. Strong families never are guaranteed that your family will be safe from certain dangers, but statistically, you are far more likely to be safe. If you watch some of these things, I've seen some of the stuff with Epstein and the human trafficking world. And one of the things that's just common in the human trafficking world, there are certain types that they go after. And young ladies from strong homes who have fathers in their lives, brothers and all that, they typically avoid those people because they know, hey, if this girl comes up missing, too many people are going to be looking. And so just fathers, one of the best things you can do to protect your daughters is to make sure you just stay in her life. And a lot of the predators, a lot of those groomers that are out there, they prey on the weak. And they typically target fatherless children, fatherless females. And again, there's no guarantee, but statistically, your family is so much safer. And so, young ladies, maybe your father died, okay? That's not your fault. You're not a bad person because of that, but there's a vulnerability there, and you need to make sure you have extra protections in your life. And so another thing God intended, and everybody can have this, and that is a church. Hey, God wants us to be in church. A church will help keep you from becoming a radicalized nut job. Now, again, there's exceptions. There are churches that have basically formed as a result of radicalized internet communities coming together. And so there are churches where everybody's in, it's a church built on nut jobs. Okay. Obviously there's exceptions out there. However, your typical church that's in a community where most of the people in the church are people from that community, where they were raised, who have family in the area as well. I mean, these are very good places to be. The Bible says in Galatians 6:1, brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest also be tempted. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. We need people helping us carry our burdens. For if a man think himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceiveth himself. So it's one of the reasons we have church, so we can help each other. And we do. Sometimes we need somebody to lift us up. Sometimes we need somebody to kick our backside. And many of you in the internet world, you don't have that. Okay? I'll kick your backside right here the best I can with my words. But there's something about somebody that you know, somebody that knows you, that just face to face looks at you like you're stupid when you're saying dumb stuff. You need that kind of thing. You need to go to a church where people aren't afraid to tell you that's stupid. You need to go to a church like that where they will put you in your place when you do dumb things. You need those people praying for you who actually care about you. James 5:16, confess your faults one to another. Pray for one another. You may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. If you're not online, I doubt anybody's praying for you, especially you personally. I'm going to pray for all my online followers right now. See, no, there's something about somebody praying for you, somebody interceding to God on your behalf. We need that. It's going to be a lot more effective than your online guru just doing a general prayer over everybody, which is really lazy. And so 2 Thessalonians 3:14, and if any man obey not our word by this epistle, note that man and have no company with him, that he may be ashamed. You want to know why a lot of people don't want to go to church? Because they don't want anybody ever shaming them. Sometimes you need to be ashamed. That's the same reason you isolated yourself from your family, so nobody can shame you when you're being pathetic and you won't get a job, when you're a loser and you won't take care of your wife, you won't take care of your kids. Yeah, your family and your church is going to judge you. And if you're a deadbeat, if you're not taking care of your kids, if things are just out of control, somebody's going to say something. And what do? Oh, that church was so judgmental. I'm going to go find some place where I won't get judged. No, you needed that. You needed to be ashamed in those situations. And so people in a church, they're going to be a good influence on your life. And if you're not in church, you don't have that. We all need these things in our life. But you know what? What is it about the radicals? They're always isolated. They're always isolated. They're always this kind of loner. And not all the time, okay? Again, you have your Ted Bundys that are out there that are just very well liked and respected and social butterflies and all that. Yeah, you want to know why guys like Ted Bundy is so famous is because it's such a rare thing, okay? He's a rare thing. Okay? I'm talking about what we're talking about today is very common. And so another thing that we all need is local community. Okay, now this is one area where our American culture has some problems. And I think this is one of the reasons too, your average IFB church is not as effective as it used to be. Culturally, in America today, we are very isolated from our local communities. We don't know our neighbors very well. I mean, I wonder how many people listening to this right now, you know by name the people who live next door to you. A lot of people don't. We do. It took years though. It often takes years before, and we, now our one neighbor died. Now it's my son. Our other neighbor, we've gotten to know her really good in the last several years, but it was several years before we got to know her. And it's just kind of how we are. We do our own thing. The people that we interact with, in the stores and the gas station, we don't know them by name. We don't talk to them. We don't know each other. And so there was a time when everybody in a village and a town, they all knew each other. And, they had a reputation in the community. Everybody knew who they were. That's how it was for Jesus. The Bible talks about Jesus, even as a young child. It says he increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. People knew who he was. When he was preaching in the one place, said, is not this the carpenter's son? They knew who he was. He had a reputation. They knew his family. They knew his mother. They knew his brothers and his sisters. They knew all these people. Samuel, he had the same thing, said the same thing about him it did Jesus. He was in favor both with the Lord and also with men. And you know what? Community puts expectations on you. And there's a part of us in our carnal nature where sometimes we want to just go live out in the wilderness. And we say it's because we're sick of people, and that's part of it. Okay, I don't think that's all bad, but a lot of times too, we don't like societal expectations they have. But understand, there are societal expectations. That's why a lot of people can't stay in a church for very long. Because you know what's going to happen? The longer you are in a church, when you first visit a church, people have no expectations for you. There's not much pressure. It's all honeymoon. But eventually, after you've been in that church for a while, after you've been under the preaching, after you've been around that congregation, you see how things work. What happens is people start putting expectations on you. They don't expect you to get a DUI. They expect you to come to church. They expect you to take care of your wife and kids. They don't expect you to abuse your children. They expect you to protect your families. And a lot of people, they don't like that. And understand, communities do the same thing. And not only do communities expect you to obey certain laws, they can punish you if you don't. It takes away a lot of temptation. You can't just drive like a maniac. Can't do drag races in town. You get caught, you're going to get in trouble. You might go to jail. You steal things, they'll throw you in the slammer. And it's interesting how a lot of these so-called libertarian types almost go into anarchy is what they want. But understand, we need that local government. Hey, I disagree with this idea that government is something that's only to be done in churches and the government's not to be involved. I absolutely do think government ought to be involved in marriages. You know why? Because first off, it's the government that is supposed to hold men accountable for sexual immorality. Therefore, there should be some kind of process to show a union between a man and woman is legit. And so the church doesn't have the right to execute people. The church doesn't have the right to lay stripes on people. It's the God instituted the government for that. So they should be the one that does record marriages and things. Someone also needs to hold men accountable for their financial obligations. We can't even make you tithe. And since the church doesn't have that authority to punish evildoers, it should be the government. And if you do, if for whatever reason you decide to dump your wife, you should still have to provide for her. You should have to take care and provide for those kids. And so somebody needs to hold you accountable. And you know, it's your community that does that. And so if the church is in charge of marriage and divorce and the government is involved in the punishment of evildoers, it would require the government to get involved in church affairs when there's some kind of moral or financial, thing that takes place. So again, all these things are things that will help us keep from becoming radicalized. But you nut jobs out there, okay, people who are about to get triggered by some of the things I'm going to say, understand, I suspect you have been isolated from family, church, and your community. I'll bet nobody in your community hardly knows who you are. I bet your neighbors don't know who you are, and if they do, they don't get along with you. So my church knows me. How long have you even been there? Have you even been there 3-4 years? No, you never lasted that long. You never lasted 5 years in a church. You know why? Because you always leave about the time expectations start getting put on you. And so you do. You attend churches, but you haven't joined one. You're not a member of one. You're not faithfully plugged into one where you have some kind of accountability. You're a radical nut job, that's why you've isolated yourself. And so also avoid people who try to isolate you. There are preachers who preach in a way almost encouraging their people to isolate. Again, yes, there is a time to cut yourself off from family. There's a time to leave a church. I get that. But for some of you, it's all the time. For some of you, it's every little thing. And that's why you're a nut job. And so just because there is a time and place for something in the Bible doesn't mean it's always time. Yes, there's a time to kill. There's a time to love and a time to hate. But for some of you, it's always time to hate. It's like, this doesn't seem like an appropriate time to hate. But I do. I hate my grandma. Why? Because she died and she wasn't saved and she's in hell and therefore she's now a reprobate and I hate her. You're a weirdo. Right? And so just beware of that person who goes the extreme in everything, especially online. He's doing it for the algorithm. He's doing it for the clicks and the views. And I know it's fun to watch. It's entertaining. I want to behave that way sometimes. And I know it's not right. Okay? Again, but sometimes I hear things being preached and sometimes I want to stand up and say, that's stupid. But that would be out of line. It would be out of line for me to do something like that. But there's always somebody who will do that online, and it's like, it's kind of satisfying to watch. So watch out for that person going to the extreme on everything. Those are spiritual trannies. I talk about them all the time. Not going to talk about it again. Just beware of those who act like everyone's evil except their little group. These people are dangerous. Just work on some humility, work on charity, so you don't develop the insecurity that comes from just pride and ignorance. And so, having said all that, I did want to just kind of talk about some of the, if you have any questions, leave them on there. But I do want to talk about, some of these things with salvation. Okay. One of the things that we're seeing with Charlie Kirk, and you people just annoy the fire out of me. And again, you don't go to my church. I have no authority over you, but just make sure you never come to my church. Okay. We don't want you here. Do not ever try to identify yourself with me. I am not one of you. You are not one of me. But when it comes to salvation, okay, the behavior of some people and the way they react to anyone who does not identically articulate everything exactly the way they do about salvation, I just find extremely repulsive. I find it extremely annoying. And I think you're completely out of line. Hang on a second. I'm trying to do something on here, but hang on a second. Okay. And so with Charlie Kirk, again, some of the excuses people are coming up with for why he's not saved are frankly just ridiculous. And y'all are showing your insanity and you're showing your radicalization. And it's like, and I maybe I shouldn't mention this. I don't want to encourage anybody, but something that I do, and I get these recommendations on YouTube. I've gone down how many's ever gone down the Jack Smack rabbit hole and that whole world, the online free grace world. Those are the weirdest people in the Christian world. Okay. Where they talk a good game on free grace, eternal security, all that, but they are constantly throwing everyone in hell. I mean, anybody, if they've ever at any point in their life, and again, somebody's going to find some place in Charlie Kirk's life where he said repent wrong, and therefore, he's a Lord shipper, he's a damnable heretic. That's, I was about to do an invitation. I don't want to do that right now. It's just completely out of line. And so if Benjamin, I went ahead and I sent you an invite if you want to try coming on the program. If somebody else wants to come on the program and add to this, that's fine. I'll try to read some of these comments. But here's the thing. In the free grace world, if it's like the only people on the planet that are saved are the people that we lead to the Lord while out soul winning. And if anybody doubts the people that we get saved out soul winning are saved, it's probably because they're a works backloader and they're going to split hell wide open. And at the same time, it's like, okay, we are so extreme that the people we're witnessing to out soul winning are getting saved, that anybody who calls their salvation into question, we are also declaring as unsaved. But here's the thing about that. These people that we lead to the Lord that don't start coming to our churches, do we really think that if somebody were to ask them later about their salvation 5 years from now, that they are going to properly articulate everything they're going to say everything exactly right, use the word repent right? Do we think it's not possible for them to maybe hear some false doctrine that's confusing and just get their minds a little confused on some of these things? Of course, people are going to be able to get confused on some stuff. And the thing is, there are people, like one of the things people say, oh, he was a part of the Assembly of God. Okay. All right. Now let me just blow everybody's mind. I had a very good friend who went to an Assembly of God church for years and years, who was saved. Okay. Now what the weirdo is going to do, what the guy looking for clicks, the radical is going to do, assembly, they are going to attach a negative label. That's Calvinism. That's preterism. That whatever. They're always doing that kind of. That's from the Jesuits. They're always doing that kind of thing. Well, here's the funny thing about that. These people that you're talking about probably don't even know about Jesuits. They probably don't even know about any of these people that you're talking about. And so, but all they know is just that one church they go to. And where I used to live, there were some Assembly of God churches around there where I talked to multiple people from those churches who were definitely saved. And I would always be confused by that because I was like, wait, I thought Assembly of God were like Pentecostal and Pentecostal speak in tongues. And I had a coworker that I was very close to. And I thought, and then I found out he was going to, and I thought he was saved. He said he was a Christian. We had talked about salvation a little bit, and he definitely seemed like he was saved. But then I found out he was going to an Assembly of God church. And me being a young punk, I thought, well, there's no way he's saved if he's going to an Assembly of God church. And I was confused out of my mind as a young man because I'm thinking, how can a person who goes to an Assembly of God church be saved? They speak in tongues. And so I remember I started talking to him about it one time. And I asked him, because he was answering everything right on salvation. He definitely seemed to understand salvation and grace and that works. And all that. And I asked him, I said, what about tongues? It's like, you believe in tongues? He's like, oh, no, I don't believe in tongues. He was like laughing at it. I was like, well, I said, don't you go to an Assembly of God church? Don't they speak in tongues? And he's like, there's only like one or two people in our church that every once in a while you might hear them kind of off by themselves when something's going on speaking in tongues. And he's like, I just think it's funny. And I'm like, okay. And here's what you got to understand. Not everybody who joins a denomination has fully embraced all the doctrine of that denomination. A lot of times they don't even know. If those of you who soul win at all, how often do you go out soul winning and you talk to people and they say, I'm Catholic, I'm Methodist, I'm whatever. And you know what their religion teaches better than they do. It is you cannot just write somebody off because they say, I am with this religion. Because some religions, there are some churches, they're more like social clubs. People go there more for the fellowship, the music, just the community. They like all that, and they never teach doctrine. Even in Baptist churches, I don't know if most, a lot of Baptist churches today do very little teaching on doctrine, very little expository preaching. It's almost all topical stuff. And then even when they preach doctrines that are right, they misuse the scriptures to do it. I have heard some terrible messages on eternal security where people butchered the scripture to prove eternal security. But they were right on eternal. Yeah, salvation is still eternal, but what you did with the scriptures to prove it was embarrassing. And so it's even worse in other religions. So it's possible. It's very possible. In fact, it's likely that in a lot of these churches where there's sincere people in there reading their Bibles and learning the truth and getting saved. And yeah, they're probably going to pick up some bad lines. They're going to probably pick up some bad terminology. But in the meantime, those of you who go to these that just have the purest doctrine, I mean, you have the purest, clearest plan of salvation that nobody can possibly condemn. Okay? Those of you like that, you can't even figure out doctrine about behavior. You behave more like a lost person than lost people do in many cases. It's like, so yeah, you've got all this salvation stuff figured out, but being a Christian, you have no idea how to do that. And these other people are figuring it out on their own. So it's very frustrating. But we got Benjamin on the program. Benjamin, this is the guy who's made a couple of my latest promo videos on here. Benjamin, how you doing today?
I can't hear you. Can you hear me? I cannot.
Yeah, I can hear
you. Yeah, I was hearing you fine until like 10 seconds ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
These headphones and this iPhone.
I'm gonna try refreshing, I think.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to read the comments right now. Let's see. He definitely had that Charlie in Hell shirt. It's not something I would expect from anyone other than Westboro Baptist Church, who's probably entertaining protesting his funeral. Yeah, please. Yeah, people don't act like Westboro Baptist Church. Those people are insane. Westboro focuses on homos. Yeah. Are they even still around? see. I'm sorry, folks. I'm not smart enough to talk and read comments at the same time. So those algorithms are 100% making radicals. It's by design, probably by its source. Again, I think ultimately it's not to make people radical. I think it's just to keep them engaged. But we are more likely to be engaged with insanity. So, all right, can you hear me now, Benjamin?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right.
And by the way, congrats on being a grandpa.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So what do you have for us?
Well, yeah, my mind's just been whirling the last couple of days with everything that's been going on. I think you bring up a good point just now about how a lot of Baptist churches are not even teaching doctrine. I've been there myself. Now I've for the past 10, 14 years been listening to a lot of preaching online, and been learning doctrine and studying and everything. But in my experience in a former church, it's basically just assumed that everybody already believes the same way, and these churches, I can imagine other churches like that are not really set up to actually have visitors from an Assembly of God church come in. Funny you mentioned that as well. That's actually the church I grew up in. But yeah, these churches are not like designed, or these pastors, the way they preach, are not geared toward actually convincing somebody of that persuasion if they happen to walk in as a visitor. You might hear them rip against tongue speaking and everything. Everybody already agrees with that, but you're not going to prove it. Everybody's already on board, and nobody has any need to know how to exhort and convince the gainsayers, is what the Bible says, and that's
right. Well, and one thing too that's very common in a lot of other religions is they'll take anybody as a pastor. Some of these churches are so desperate for pastors, they'll take anybody, even if they're not even from that religion, and they just want somebody to fill the pulpit. And if the guy can preach, and so I actually was out soul winning a couple of years ago, and I talked to a guy who said he was a Pentecostal. He used to be a Pentecostal pastor for, I forgot how many years he pastored a Pentecostal church in Chicago. And so we started talking, and so yeah, for sure, this guy's not saved, right? So I asked him, I was like, hey, what do you believe a person has to do to go to heaven? And he's like, yeah, put your faith in Jesus Christ, and that works. He's saying everything right. And I was like, you believe you could ever do anything to lose your salvation? And it was funny. He was just, I asked him that question, and he was just like, it was like he never really thought about it, but all of a sudden he just starts thinking like this, and he starts quoting different scriptures, and he was just like, no. He's like, no, there's no way you could lose your salvation. Really? I was like, that, like you believe that? And he's like, yeah. He's like, no, and he didn't. He started giving me scriptures, but it was like he never thought of it. But he knew the scriptures. So when I asked him that, and he started thinking about it, he started recalling it. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what about tongues? And and he didn't really believe in tongues either. And I'm thinking, was this guy ever really a Pentecostal? But again, it was probably just one of these small weird churches, and he preached good, ran a good program, never taught doctrine, and it was. I was really confused. I remember that day we were both so confused. We were trying to find some way to take away this guy's salvation, but he was just doing everything right. And so, I think
another thing you have to,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think another thing you have to take into account is a lot of people are actually born into these churches, and they've been what they have been taught, where they're wrong on whether born in a Catholic church or a Pentecostal church or whatever. They grew up in that and lived that for 30, 40 years. They're not just going to walk into a church, different persuasion, and you're not just going to hit them with 3 verses and expect them to convert. They've been seeped in that, and you have to realize that that you're not going to just convince somebody overnight. So if you're just wanting to reprobate somebody instantly because they believe this or that weird, well think about their background. Is that what they've been told? Because we all know that if you're told something for long enough, you're going to believe it. So most of us are not really programmed to think, yeah, what I believed my entire life is wrong. So that's just another thing I find really the IFB really needs to work on is knowing the doctrine themselves and knowing why they believe it and not just being different and radical just because it looks cool. We hold all these standards, but we can't exactly show you in the Bible where it is. It's just what was passed down to us.
Well, I think that, even in a lot of Baptist churches today, a lot of people who call themselves Baptists, they have no idea why they're Baptists. They have no idea what the doctrine is. They go to the church because that's where their friends are. That's where their family is. They like the pastor. They like the program. And so, again, in a lot of these places, they typically pick up better lingo. They're probably more likely to give you the right answers because they hear a lot of these things, but they don't, it's not really anything to them. So it's just, it's obviously when people tell me they're whatever, I'm not just going to, especially if I'm witnessing to them, I'm going to check and I'm going to ask questions, but, there just are possibilities. And so, the fact that somebody like Charlie Kirk, he can say so many right things. And even, I don't think he lived like a fundamental Baptist, but I think fundamental Baptists, we think we're the only people that are saved. We got Jesse Michael on here. He said, Charlie Kirk said moments before he died that he likes the fact that Mormon Church sends their missionaries around the world. He is not a martyr for Christ. Okay, so here's the problem with that. Maybe he likes the fact that he feels like they're doing goodwill things and, digging wells and, doing, which is missions in a lot of churches. They go and they dig wells, they build houses, they send doctors, they do like humanitarian stuff. He could have been referring to that. But at the same time, he lost his salvation because of that. But no spirit-filled believer would be praising a church who is responsible for misleading millions of people to hell. Again, and not everybody who is saved is as passionate about keeping the message pure as we Baptists are. A lot of people, they're not familiar with what other places are actually teaching. They don't say a lot of the same things that we do. But Jesse, aren't you the one that threw Charles Spurgeon? Who's the preacher he's got thrown into hell? Lester Roloff. That's right. Even Lester Roloff split hell wide open because he didn't use all our terminology like we're using today just right. But
honestly, you could find a reason to throw anybody in hell the way these people do. You'll find if you want to reprobate somebody. But the Charlie Kirk thing, I too gravitate that he most likely was saved from what I've seen, and I have seen a few red flags like the Mormon thing, but I don't want to go to one extreme and ignore but give too much benefit of the doubt. But again, I didn't know the guy, and there's always circumstantial possibilities, like you said.
Well, here's something I like about Mormons. They dress modestly. They dress nice. And I've been told, too, if you go out in Mormon country, you can go to a lot of places. You can get suits cheap. You can find ladies can find modest clothing real easy, and it's typically really cheap. And so I'm glad they dress nice. I hate their message, but, I wouldn't be against buying some of their clothes. But hopefully I don't lose my salvation because of that. Sometimes people they're a little nicer than they should be, but I wouldn't take away their salvation or their martyrdom status because of that. Again, if a bad Christian gets killed for his faith, he's still a martyr. So,
just thinking about that, if you look at the martyrs throughout history, it's not like you're going to find any independent fundamental Baptists among them. before that was a movement. Know what I mean? You're going to find all kinds of, like even before they had a full Bible, you'll find some very weird things that the martyrs believed, but by the word of their testimony, I have no reason to take away their salvation. Like why would you die for Christ if you didn't believe in him in your heart? If the Spirit of God was not in you. I mean, I'm sure there's like an exception or two, but I don't get people being so quick to throw people in hell. Like what's people get any points for that or something? For how many people can just say like.
Yeah, I've been wondering the same thing. It's just like, do you people find comfort and security in your salvation by making sure nobody else is saved? And it's like on all these free grace channels out there, most of their videos is this person's going to hell. This person's a reprobate. This person's going to split hell wide open. They're always exposing everybody. It's just exposing each other. That's all they do. It's almost like they all believe limited atonement. It's like only 144,000 people are going to get into heaven. And so they've got to make sure that they stop as many other people because it will like increase their chances. It's like, do you think your chances of getting into heaven will be increased if fewer people are going? And here's what it comes down to. Everybody that we're talking about who's out there throwing Charlie Kirk in hell, all of them are people who have probably spent countless hours watching sermons of preachers throwing other people in hell. And they found that entertaining. And in those sermons, in order for the preacher to prove that person's not going to hell, the way he proved it, and if you believe like that, you're probably not even saved either. It's like, well, I want to be saved. So, I think they're going to hell too. So it's like the more people... the more people they throw in hell, the more secure they feel in their own salvation.
I mean, I have my own opinions on people I think who are false professors, but I'm not going to be 1,000% dogmatic on most of them. And I don't dish out reprobations lightly. And I'm a Christian. I don't want anybody to go to hell. Yeah, I mean, just do you people want people to see people in hell? Is that what it is? Because I'm not seeing a spirit of actually wanting to see these people in heaven, all of us are going to be wrong about something, and we'll be straightened out when we're glorified.
Yeah. So, question, Pastor, how do you take the statement that church is supplemental to family worship? Meaning like it's just in addition to, I'm not sure if I totally understand that question, but maybe if you want to rephrase that one for me in case I'm missing something, but I'll let you go, Benjamin, but I just wanted to give other people a chance to jump on if they want to. If anybody else wants to, send me an email. If I know who you are, I'll let you on. But are you going to come up and visit us? Still thinking about coming up and visiting us for our preaching conference?
It's looking that direction.
Cool.
So, Lord willing.
All right.
Yes, sir. Well, see you then, Lord willing. Thanks again.
Yes, sir. You take care. We'll talk to you later. Bye. All right. So, Pastor, you take the statement that church is supplemental to family worship. And I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like, obviously, I don't know if I'll let you rephrase that question. I don't want to I might be getting the wrong idea about it. But all right, let me see. If I skipped your question, just put it down again. I'm trying to catch up. I hear lots of tears over their lost souls in that comment. You people that just seem like you want everyone to go to hell, I will never understand you. I don't want to understand you, but I am amused. And again, I remember one time I was sitting in a parking lot, waiting for my wife while she was inside shopping. And I was out there for a while. I don't remember how long it was, but I went down this rabbit hole. I found like this whole community of free gracers. And the way I found out, I think Jack Smack threw one of them in hell. And then I went and I watched his response where he was like throwing Jack Smack in hell and they were throwing this other guy in hell. And I looked back up and I was just back and forth. And I'm like, what in the world? This is psychotic. And It was just like a contest of who was just the most free grace. Everybody was trying to out free grace each other. And it was kind of hilarious. And one thing they all had in common too, while they were in the process of throwing each other in hell, they just had vile language too. I mean, just filthy mouths, which is, again, why I don't just want to let anybody come on here. I'm afraid the perverts will come on here and try to just, drop F-bombs and stuff just to be edgy. And I don't need any of that. But it's just very sad. But anyway, let me see. Still trying to catch up on this. I think it's just how society works. If church is like a family, we should hold each other accountable, care for each other. Should be anyway. I totally agree. Yeah, and that's just it. Some of y'all, you don't have family, and that's not your fault necessarily, but you can't have a church family. Find a church family. So important. And if the pastor accidentally says repent wrong one time, don't throw him in hell and leave the church. Have some grace. Yeah, go read the Bible and go to church to learn. It's like, I'm nothing but a sinner that needed to be saved. You needed to learn how to say all the right things regarding doctrine. Otherwise, you're not really saved. But anyway. Live in Gurnish, Illinois. I've never even heard of that. I don't know if that was a typo or what. Let me see. Sweet, just got your time. My voice of reason. I love this pastor. I feel like the worst Christian. I hate those I perceive as enemies of God and his people. Hate. Yeah, that was it. If a church is sold out on Zionism, is it still a good church? It's possible. It really is. Yeah, and that's another thing. A lot of people are trying to throw Charlie Kirk in hell because he was pro-Israel. Okay, what in the world? Because he was pro-Israel? And that's what you people don't understand. It's like people, they will read back about like some of these old reformers and these people from way back in the day who say a lot of things wrong. It's like, wait, that was from a time when scriptures were very hard to come by. That was from a time when the Catholics had a stranglehold on a lot of Europe, and it was very hard to get truth. And there were people who found nuggets of truth, and I believe found enough to where they got saved. But and over the years, now we have more access to the scriptures. I think in a lot of areas and in a lot of places, and even in myself personally, in my 30, however many years of ministry, I've been in the ministry for 25 years. I've been in the ministry. And I have gotten better at articulating what I believe. I've always believed the same thing about salvation, but I've gotten better at presenting it. I've learned ways to make it more clear, to be less confusing. I have been challenged on things. It was like, hey, don't say it this way. It can get the wrong idea. And often a lot of things I've changed too. It's because when I'm out soul winning, if every time I say something, people are getting the wrong idea, and it's like, okay, maybe I need to express it this way. It's one thing I love about this podcast. It's helped me develop how I teach a lot of things, even on end times. It's like, I don't want people to constantly be getting the wrong idea about what I believe based on my words. So if I can use words that make it even more clear, I'm going to use those words. And so and in the Baptist world, there are certain areas where I think we've gotten better, and we've encouraged other preachers to do the same thing. The problem is if they don't get on board right away, we want to like just cream them for being heretics. I knew a preacher like that years ago. He was always learning some new thing. And then it was like, he started like demanding everybody teach it. It's just like, and then he would break fellowship with people who wouldn't get on board with something he didn't even believe a year ago. It's like, hey, how about you give people some time on these things? And so I think that as time goes on, hopefully we're going to continue getting better. And, and we're going to be like, hey, don't say this. It might give people the wrong idea. Let's not do this thing where like, if you're saved, you'll do the works. We're sending a confusing message by that there. And so I think we should not say that, but there's people who say it that are saved. And if I succeed as Pope of the IFB in making everyone stop saying that, okay, because we're confusing too many people with it, and then 50 years later, somebody's reading a quote from one of these people where they said, oh, they weren't saved. It's like, no, they were saved. It's another example of we're applying a modern standard on a previous generation. And as a movement, we learn about mistakes that we're making, things that we need to improve on, things we need to fix. And when we fix those things, that's good. We become better now as a result of it. But now let's not just go condemning the previous generations. That's not right. And so when it comes to Zionism and being pro-Israel, I kind of expect that from most Christians, because you can get saved and have the wrong idea about Israel. And it is so ingrained in our political and American culture, we shouldn't be that surprised when people have that belief. And so to just declare somebody unsaved because of that. And interestingly enough, Charlie Kirk seemed to be showing signs that he was about to flip on that issue. And a lot of people have been flipping on that issue in the last couple of years. Since October 7th, people have been getting a real-time view of what's actually going on over there and what that government is really like. And people are waking up to it. But you know what? If the IFB if they wake up to how false Zionism is, 50 years from now, we don't go back and look at those same preachers like they were unsaved. No, they were saved. Okay, anti-Zionism is not the gospel. So let's stop being ridiculous about that. But anyway, trying to get back to the comments. Fact that Christians love Charlie Kirk is telling. Again, well, everybody loves him right now too because he got shot. Okay, I was never that close of a follower with him. I've definitely seen more Charlie Kirk stuff this week than I ever had in all my time before. But in reality, he was a very hated individual. Okay, so now, we're gonna we have that, woe and all men speak well of you. Okay, everybody is now because he got shot, but before they definitely were not. He was hated so much, he got shot. Okay, and let me just say this about most of you out there, and let me say this about 100% of you out there who want to thump your chest and say that he wasn't saved. You don't ever have to worry about getting shot because you'll never be worth it to anybody. Because most of us aren't having that big of an impact. When you have an impact, that's when you're going to get a target on your back. And so just keep that in mind. And again, so why are you defending him? Again, I don't know what all he preached on this stuff. I find it revolting how anxious Baptists are and just throwing people in hell. I'm sick of this culture where you find your security and those people, other people not going to heaven. I think it's weird. I think it's carnal. And you know what? Where were you when he was alive calling out all this stuff? So just because somebody's involved in politics does not mean they're not saved. Okay? Obviously, I have chosen not to use politics to try to change the world. But everybody's always wanting to pit soul winning against everything else. We need to go back to soul winning. Well, I agree. I absolutely agree. But in the meantime, I'm glad we've got some people attempting to do good in government. I hope we have some Christians still left in there. And so it's so weird. Again, Christian or Baptists they're some of the most narcissistic people in the world. We just cannot handle anybody saying anything positive about someone outside our group. I find it very, very revolting. But all right, still trying to get caught up. I am so far behind. Westboro were 5-point Calvinists. Were they really? That really doesn't surprise me. Okay. I wish I was smart enough to like do monologues while searching for things at the same time, but I just do not have that skill. I'm gonna have to shut this down pretty soon. But again, if you have any other questions, make sure you leave them. I will fellowship with IFB, but not a Baptist. What are you, Lucky KJV? Why aren't you a Baptist? Are you even saved? Can you explain free grace? So free grace basically is just, salvation, grace, it's free. It's not earned. It's not based on works. It's pretty simple, and we're saved by grace through faith, not of works. It's a gift. It's a free gift. And so we always like to out free each other. And so if people don't articulate it exactly right, but free, I definitely believe in free grace. However, the free grace community on the internet, full of isolated, radicalized nut jobs, I want nothing to do with. These people would not be welcomed in our church. All right, Brandon, rephrase question. I finally got down to you. What are your opinions about the bulk of the training, teaching, and doctrine being the responsibility of the father in the home? Church being supplemental to that. Okay. Yeah, so obviously, if you are a father, ultimately it is your responsibility to make sure your family is taught in the ways of God. You do not want to depend only on your church, okay? For sure, because, I'm the pastor of the church, of this church, but at the same time, as a father, as a husband, I'm responsible for my family and the things they're taught and the things they learn. And so one of the things I'm going to do as a father, though, is I'm going to get them in a church that is doing that very thing, because yes, the church is supposed to do that. We are supposed to, we're supposed to be teaching others. We're supposed to be taught in the church. So the church is not the only place you can learn. However, it is a place where we are commanded to learn. It's a place where we are commanded to teach. And so as a father, I do not ever want to separate my family from church and from learning in church and things like that. But you know what I'm not going to do too? I'm not going to sit around and cry if I'm in my church and maybe they overlooked something. Maybe I was at this church for 3 years and they never one time taught on the reprobate doctrine. Okay, well then you teach your family the reprobate doctrine. Let the church help you. And they are. No church is going to be perfect. They might miss in some areas. So you need to make sure you know what the scriptures say as well. And it does. It helps a lot if you've got a really good church that's good at it. But ultimately, as a father, as a husband, as the leader of my home, it's on me to make sure that gets done. And one of the ways I'll do it, I will teach it in my home, but I will also make sure my family is a part of a church that is teaching right doctrine at the same time. So hopefully that helps answer the question. But let me see. Don't conservative Christians break fellowship when they get mad? Yeah, there's a time to break fellowship. Okay. Yeah, there's a time to break fellowship, but sometimes it's more done out of carnality than spirituality. We're always going to say it's spiritual because we've got verses about breaking fellowship, but most of the time it's carnal, and we know why. And so, Pastor Tommy, is free grace doctrinally just not the kind you find online that look for any hiccup to condemn others to hell? Yeah, said there's always somebody at some point in their life. They probably said something wrong, had a bad line. I heard one. I don't have the quote in front of me, so I'm not going to give it. I listened to one quote that Charlie Kirk said that there was a line in there that sounded a little lordshipy. Okay? Now, the free gracers out there would eat that up and just use that to condemn them to hell for sure. However, it appeared based on the context of the conversation that was taking place, I think he was trying to describe something else. And so there are a lot of times people, while expressing the importance of not just getting saved, okay, the free gracers, all they care about is getting saved. That's it. Just get saved, go to heaven when you die. That's all they care about. Some of us care about all the Great Commission. Some of us want to teach them, preach the gospel and to baptize them and to teach them to observe all things. Some of us who truly love individuals, we don't want them to just go to heaven. We also want them to have a good life here on this earth. And so we are going to instruct them in the ways of God, and we are going to exhort them to earnestly contend for the faith and to walk in the faith and to do the things that God said. We're going to care about all of those things. And sometimes when people are expressing the importance of following Christ, because understand, when God's pouring his wrath out on the world, it's because of their fornication and idolatries and all. It names off all these sins. It says they repented not of those things. And understand, if you get saved and you continue living a life of debauchery, you're going to suffer on this earth. And God judges nations for that kind of sin. God judges nations for that kind of sin. And so people who are trying to change America, of course, we're going to call people to repent of their sins while calling on them to believe on Christ. We want them to believe on Christ, but we also want our nation to repent of their fornications and their idolatries and their homosexualities and the abortion and all these things, because they're going to bring God's judgment on our nation. Some people in the free grace world, they think only about the soul. Some people are thinking about soul and body. They're thinking about the nation. And if you go back and you look at the apostles, they went in the book of Acts, they were not just preaching in a way to try to get souls saved. They were also trying to save their nation because they were aware of the judgment that was heading their way because of their sins. And they wanted their nation to be saved. And so that's an important thing to understand. And so, but yeah, I think these people are envious and want to use his name for clout. Possible. Let me see. Here we go. Question. We're still door knocking. The threat plane has changed, especially in our blue cities. The feelings are bad. How can we pray for more bravery and boldness? It didn't work today. Yeah, and I have noticed that. I didn't notice it as much this last time, but I remember in 2020, and 2020 was a crazy year for a lot of reasons. I had more just nasty hostility here locally, than we had in a long time. Just people that were very hostile towards the things of God. And a lot of times when political things flare up, people get really nasty. And yeah, that's an example of be instant, in season, out of season. There are going to be seasons of times where the gospel is not received as well, where people are lost. There's going to be times when there's flat out persecution. And there's other times where it's going to be great. And you have to do the same thing. Be wise as serpent, harmless as doves. Sometimes we've got to work on being tactful, work on our skills and just kind of de-escalating things, not being confrontational, not being threatening. And I think the more you go souling, the better you will be at that. But when we go through times of just heightened hostility, it's these times when you need to develop that and just stick with it, keep going on, and just work on those things, whatever you can do to de-escalate things. Because I'll tell you right now, I remember in 2020, I had people bringing up Trump and stuff. And it's like, I don't want to talk about Trump when I'm out souling. Absolutely do not want to talk about Trump. And every election year I've ever gone souling, people typically, that comes up a lot because that's what's on people's minds. And I hate it. In fact, I remember when Trump was running the first time, I remember Ted Cruz was it was kind of between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. And I've never been a big fan of Ted Cruz. And I remember all the Baptists during that time were Ted Cruz. I remember the Revival Fires, they did a whole write-up and had his testimony in there. And I'm just like, I don't want Ted Cruz to be president. And my reason I didn't want Ted Cruz to be president is because I didn't trust him, for one, but also he was pushing his Christianity so much, and I didn't think it was authentic. And I did not want him being the face of Christianity. And so I'm like, you know what? I just don't feel like being persecuted for Ted Cruz's sake. And so it's like, if I'm going to be persecuted for the sake of being a Christian, let's get a real one in there and let's just, have this thing out. And so I remember during that time, I'm like, I would almost rather have Trump because nobody is going to associate Trump and Christianity together. Now, it still happened, okay? And it was because the powers that be, they wanted to go after Christians. That's why it did that. But I didn't think that with Trump being in office, there would be an attack on Christianity. Yet there still kind of was. I did not see that coming. I absolutely did not see that coming. But yeah, even in 2016, I was seeing a lot of that when we were out soul winning. So yeah, pray for more bravery and boldness, and just ask the Lord to just help you develop some people skills, some tact, and you'll do fine. One thing that I'm really good at, I don't like to talk about being good at stuff, but I'm very good at de-escalating situations. And so I have had some close calls out soul winning where I am convinced it was my de-escalation skills that stopped things from getting ugly. And one of the things, I used to occasionally watch cops, and I loved watching cops that just knew how to keep their cool when people were being belligerent. I was always impressed by that. And I've seen videos on YouTube and stuff where cops, they get authority complex, they have little man syndrome. I have no respect for that at all. I love watching cops just handle things like a man and de-escalate situations. We had one of these internet provocateur types that came into Sterling one time where they go into government buildings and they just start obnoxiously, exercising their rights to different things, trying to get the police called on them. And this girl did that, went into the DMV, and the DMV in our area is horrible. One of the requirements for working in the DMV, you have to allow yourself to go into a machine where they suck your soul out. And none of them in there have a soul. And they're psychopaths. And so she went in there and started exercising her free speech rights in a way that was legal, but obnoxious. And they called the cops on her because that's what those people will do. And the cops came, and I'd seen other videos she'd done before where cops were jerks and made things worse. The Sterling cop that came in there was so cool about it, just absolutely kept his cool, de-escalated the situation, did not violate her rights, and managed to get rid of her. In a way, it was so impressive. I love that kind of thing. I absolutely love doing that kind of thing. And so, work on that, develop that skill, and it'll help a lot. But yeah, I think a lot of people feel this way. They didn't follow him closely, but his death hit him in a really weird way. And yeah, I think that's the case for a lot of us, myself included. And here's why. One, we all saw it. That's kind of a new thing. I mean, we saw, very clear video of it happening. It's not healthy seeing things like that. And so it messed with all of us as it should, and the fact that what he got shot for, it did. We all take it personal. And it was an attack on America. It was an attack on free speech. It was an attack on a lot of the values that we stand for. And that's scary. That's scary that we live in a nation that has that kind of evil in it. And so it's a wake-up call, and it's a reality check that we don't like, and we need to do something about it. We absolutely need to fix it. And I do. We need to learn how to live in a world where we can disagree with each other and not kill each other. Okay. And hey, Baptists, we need to learn how to live in a world where we can disagree with some things. Obviously there's some things we can't disagree on. Okay. But even, and still fellowship, I should say. Again, even if you disagree that Jesus is the Messiah, okay, I shouldn't kill you for that. I shouldn't even punch you for that. Okay? Obviously, you're not going to be welcome in our church, but we always want to justify the most extreme behavior when we disagree with somebody, because it's our carnal nature. When I say I believe something and you say I disagree, you're basically putting your opinion above mine. You know what? That hurts my pride. And you know what? When our pride gets hurt, pride is a very serious sin that we all struggle with. And we are tempted to react in carnal ways. And so, Cain, he reacted in the most carnal of ways and he killed his brother. That's the worst that we do. But, but a lot of times we want to hurt people. We want to ruin people. We want to hurt their feelings. We want to destroy. And at the end of the day, it's not always about standing for right. We say that. Sometimes it's just carnal reasons and hurting our pride. And so, it's, we got to watch that. He was doing soul winning. He just wasn't doing it door to door. He was giving the gospel. Yeah, some of you all think the only way to witness and the only way to go soul winning is door to door. That's not the only way. And somebody like Charlie Kirk, he is very capable of going out and talking to thousands at one time. That's effective. I'd love to be able to do that. In the meantime, we ought to, I do what I can. We have a church service here. We do what we can to try to attract a crowd. We don't attract them like he does, but we do. That doesn't stop us from preaching. We do go out and do the door to door, and I think that's important. But it's amazing how many IIB people, if you don't soul win like we do, are you even a real church? And you do. You have the door knocking soul winning churches. They condemn other churches that don't do soul winning that way. And then some of those churches, they'll condemn you because you don't have bus routes, you don't have Sunday school class. It's like, we're all trying to get the gospel out. We should be able to have a conversation about what the most effective ways are, what the best ways are. At the end of the day, if people are getting people saved, great. That's wonderful. And I'm all for whatever method you're using to catch fish. And so anyway, let's see. I need to stop here pretty soon. Is somebody criticizing Erica Kirk's speech? I didn't see that. Whoever that is, bless your backslidden heart. I don't know what's wrong with you. Doug Wilson released his interview with Kirk. First thing he did was give glory to God and credit to the Lord for all he had. But Doug Wilson's a Calvinist. What is Charlie Kirk doing talking to a Calvinist? I would never talk to a Calvinist. Well, wait a minute. I had Doug Wilson on the program. All right. Sorry about that. No. Anyway. Well, I'm sorry, folks. I don't know. There's a lot of comments on here today. I'm trying to catch up on them. If I missed your question or something, I apologize. I didn't mean to do that, but I need to shut this down here pretty soon. But Suspicious Watermelon, you need to cool it, man. Come on. Some of your comments disturb me. Is evangelism with street preaching? Anderson condemns street preaching in all forms. As a good clone of his, I could not in good conscience call Charlie Kirk a soul winner. Yeah, see, there are some of you, I've literally heard people out there. I have more than once, I have heard people declare somebody unsaved because they go street preaching. I don't know if you realize how dumb that is. I have an interview on my other channel where I'm interviewing a street preacher and I asked about salvation, and he definitely seemed like he was saved, and it confused people so bad because in their mind, all street preachers are unsaved because all street preachers have a bullhorn and say repent of sins, and therefore they're all unsaved. Folks, listen, street preaching is not a sin. Okay, it is not a sin to street preach. The question is it the most effective way? And I guess it depends. If you're just screaming at people the whole time, if you're being obnoxious, I don't think it's the most effective way of doing things. I am not interested in using that method. But let me tell you, if a guy gets out on a street with a bullhorn and he preaches the gospel, and somebody listens and they believe, that person will be saved. And that street preacher will have gotten somebody saved. Okay? It's a method. And so we can have arguments about what methods are effective, but to just declare somebody unsaved because you don't like their method, that is ridiculous. So, I think I finally got to the end of the comments. So again, I understand we are in the age of the internet. Everybody's being radicalized. And so because of that, and we've got a lot of people that are out there that are preaching right on salvation by grace, through faith, eternal security. And all of us are trying to find better ways to prove our points, to be as clear as we possibly can be. We want to expose error. We want to correct error. We want to do all these things, but we don't want to become just these radicalized nut job in an echo chamber where anybody who is just not as clear as we are declaring them unsaved. And just, anybody who identifies with a certain religion or maybe believes a certain doctrine, that there's just no way they can believe on the Lord Jesus Christ. There's no way they believe in the Lord Jesus Christ if they believe all those things. It's ridiculous. And then when we're going and taking somebody who, was very effective in reaching people and, lifting up the name of Jesus Christ, who maybe did a little way different than we do. And maybe sometimes wasn't as clear as we are, where we're like celebrating his death and the fact that he's in hell. That is, I want nothing to do with that. You are not my people. We are not the same. We are not friends. We are not in fellowship. Again, and give people the benefit of the doubt. And there are people out there, because like as pastors, we devote our lives to studying doctrine and to studying these things in the Bible. So yes, we're very passionate about a lot of these little details. And I think we're more likely to be right on these little details. But there's a lot of other people out there who they have not devoted their life to studying the scriptures, to the Bible, to doctrine. They devoted their life to other things while at the same time being a devout Christian. But they've not put the hours in these things. And I think we need to give people the benefit of the doubt. If people appear to be saved and maybe they're just off on some things, we ought to have the attitude. And this is my attitude. It's like, when I listen to some people, I think they're almost there. I think if the truth was presented to them in the right way, I think that they could be corrected on that. And again, that was why people like Charlie Kirk, because I do believe he was truly genuine. And a lot of people who thought they were right thought, hey, if I could go debate him, I would probably change his mind. Some people debate him because they thought they were smarter than him and they could school him. But, that needs to be our approach. And there's many people out there. There's some famous people, well-known people that I think are saved. And I personally think that if they ever had the wisdom to give me an hour with them, I'd straighten them out on a whole bunch of stuff. But in the meantime, why would they give me an hour? They don't know me. They don't know you. They don't know how pure you are on your doctrine. They don't know how righteous you are. They don't know how right you are on everything. And so, forgive them for not being as well versed on the things of God as you are. Maybe one day they will be lucky enough to get an hour with you. But in the meantime, don't be surprised when you leave a comment on their YouTube channel that's getting thousands of comments and they don't pay attention to yours because it's full of profanity and cursing them out and cussing them out for being, disciples of the devil. Just because understand there's a lot of people, again, who are saved. They're mixed up on some things, but they're doing the best they can with what they've been given. And when you just go straight to accusing them being a reprobate, when they know they've got the Holy Spirit inside them, they're going to be like, what's wrong with this person? And that's why too, it's just, I've had some of the weirdos in the new IFB that have declared me a reprobate and unsaved, and it's laughable. It just completely discredits them to me because of the fact I know I'm saved. I can see what the Bible says. I have the Holy Spirit in me. And so it's laughable. It's like trying to convince me I'm not married. Okay. you can say that all you want, and you can say it real loud. You can foam with the mouth when you say it. You can get a bunch of weirdos to agree with you. But you've completely discredited yourself with me. And a lot of the people who act like they're so clear on the gospel and pure in their doctrine, the way they gave their first and second admonition was through carnal means, acting like a maniac. And the reality is they just didn't pay attention to you because you're a weirdo. And so just, most of us aren't going to get the chance to straighten everybody out. I'll probably never get to sit down with Donald Trump and explain to him how saving lives in Ukraine and Russia is not going to earn him heaven. I think if he'd give me an hour, I know I would tell him the truth. I don't know if he'd listen or not, but boy, if I ever had that opportunity, I'd be all over it. Tucker Carlson, I think he's still off on some things. I still think he's searching. I hope he finds the truth. I hope he does get saved. I hope he is saved. I don't know. But, I would love to get an opportunity to sit down with him and show them the truth. And that needs to be our attitude with people, even with high profile people. You ought to hope for the best, want the best. But the fact that they did not listen to you while screaming at them from a distance, acting like a maniac, is not proof of their reprobation. And so I hope this was a help. I hope you all will, if you get a chance, go. I'll try to remember to leave a link in the description to my sermon I did on avoiding radicalization. Some of you need to watch that sermon. Some of you are a mess. You are a weirdo, and you desperately need somebody to tell you that. And I will tell you, you are a weirdo. The people in our church will tell you, you are a weirdo and you are a freak. And some of us, sometimes we need that. And it will make all the difference in the world. Some of you need to get to know your neighbors so they can tell you you're a freak. So they can tell you that you're a weirdo. If you will let them do it, it will change your life for the better. But in the meantime, we're going to have to sign off now. I appreciate you all watching this. Make sure you like this video and share it. Leave a comment. Help the algorithm so we can make more radicals. No, we are going to stick to our original mission. We're not going to do the crazy stuff. We are going to avoid dumpster fires, even though, man, dumpster fires get the views. They'd get them subscribers up if we'd have some dumpster fires on here. But at the end of the day, I am a Christian first. I am a husband and a father second. And then I'm a pastor of a church. And then YouTuber is way down on the list. And so I am fine with sacrificing larger YouTube followings, so I can be better at these other things. I don't want to lose my soul, figuratively speaking, doing a bunch of nonsense just to help a YouTube channel. It's just not worth it. But that stuff works for a reason. And so this algorithmic radicalization they're talking about, understand how it actually works. It's because algorithms do work. They are accurate. And the people that are complaining about it, unfortunately, they're complaining about it because they want to be able to control the content. They want to be able to control what we're all seeing. And I don't know if that's a good thing either. We just need to start shaming people so they won't want to be radical, and then maybe they'll be all right. And so get close to your family, get in a good church, and get to know people in your neighborhood. And I think that'll help you a lot. So thank you all for watching this. God bless. We'll see y'all next time.